Welcome. Tonight, we will talk about money, not investments, not stocks, not the market. We will talk about something deeper and quieter and more important than any of those things. The mind behind the money. The psychology that shapes whether your wealth grows or shrinks. The patterns that, once you see them, you cannot unsee. Morgan Housel, the author of one of the most read finance books of the last decade, says that money is 80% behavior and 20% math. Most financial education focuses on the 20%. Tonight, we walk slowly through the 80. Over the next hour, you will hear about 8 mental patterns. Loss aversion, the hedonic treadmill. Status games, the power of patience. Money scripts from childhood, the risk you actually have. What wealth really buys. And the foundation of all of them, your behavior, repeated quietly across decades. You do not need to focus. You can let your eyes close. The patterns will settle. Tomorrow, and the days that follow, they will surface when you face a money decision. You will choose better, not because you remembered a fact, but because the pattern is now part of how you see. This is not advice. It is education. It is not certainty. It is a way of seeing. Most of what shapes financial outcomes over a lifetime is not what people learn in business school. It is not the strategy or the asset class. It is the small daily behaviors repeated across decades that compound into a result. The savings rate, the patience, the willingness to do nothing when others act, the ability to ignore status comparisons, the honest assessment of what is enough. You will not find these things in financial news. The news is about events. Wealth is about patterns. Events are loud. Patterns are quiet. Tonight, we listen to the patterns. Settle in. Breathe slowly. We begin. 3 core truths underlie everything we will say tonight. These are the ground on which every later pattern rests. The first truth is the market is unpredictable. Your behavior is predictable. You cannot reliably forecast what stocks would do next year. No one can. The most experienced fund managers with billions of dollars and decades of training fail to outperform a simple index fund 80% of the time over 20 years. The market is not a problem you can solve. It is a complex system you participate in. But your own behavior is different. Whether you save consistently, whether you panic in downturns, whether you check the market every day or once a year, whether you carry debt that compounds against you. These are decisions you make every day that determine your wealth far more than any forecast ever will. The implication is profound. Most people spend most of their financial attention on the part they cannot control and almost none on the part they can. The truly wealthy reverse this. They accept that markets do what markets do. They focus all their energy on the behavior that they can shape. Studies of investor returns confirm this consistently. The average individual investor underperforms the funds they own by 2 to 4 percentage points annually. The funds did fine. The investors moved in and out at the wrong moments, and the gap between what they could have earned and what they actually earned is enormous over decades. That gap is behavior, not strategy. The lesson is build your financial life around the things you can control. Saving rate, spending habits, patience in volatility, avoidance of major mistakes. These are not glamorous. They are the foundation. The second truth is time is your most powerful asset, and most people waste it. A dollar invested at age 20, growing at 7% annually, becomes about $30 by age 65. The same dollar invested at age 40 becomes about $8 by age 65. The difference is not your skill. It is not your strategy. It is time. 20 years of compounding outperforms almost any improvement in returns. This is why the most boring financial advice, start now, save consistently, do not stop, is also the most powerful. Time amplifies anything done early. Time punishes anything delayed. The trap is time is invisible. The first 10 years of saving feel pointless. The amounts are small. The growth is small. You wonder why you bothered. And then, somewhere around year 15 or 20, the compounding takes hold. The amounts that were small become serious. The growth that was invisible becomes obvious. And the people who started early are quietly, suddenly, wealthy. There is a striking truth about Warren Buffett. He has been a successful investor for many decades. But the vast majority of his wealth, over 90%, was accumulated after his 60th birthday. Not because he became dramatically smarter at 60, because by 60, compounding had been running for half a century, and the curve finally bent steeply upward. If Buffett had retired at 60 with the wealth he had at that point, he would still be considered a successful investor. But he would not be famous. The fame comes from the next 25 years of holding, while compounding did its work. You cannot create more time. You can only choose to start now. And then you have to choose every year not to stop. The third truth is compounding is invisible until it isn't. Compounding is the eighth wonder of the world, Albert Einstein supposedly said. He may not have said it. The truth of it is real anyway. The reason it is wondrous is not the math. The math is simple. The reason is that the early years look like nothing, and then the later years look like magic. A graph of compounding wealth is flat for the first 10 years. It bends slightly upward in years 10 to 20. It curves dramatically upward in years 20 to 30. By year 40, it is almost vertical. Most people quit during the flat years. They see no progress. They feel foolish. They want to do something. So they pull money out, or they change strategy, or they chase something that promises faster results. The ones who hold through the flat years, who keep saving, keep investing, keep buying through the dips, keep doing the boring thing, and up with the curve. And the curve is what makes someone wealthy. A useful mental image. Imagine a lily pad that doubles in size every day, and after 30 days it covers the entire pond. On day 29, the pond is half covered. On day 28, it is 1/4 covered. On day 20, it covers about 1/1000th of the pond. For most of the 30 days, the lily pad looks like nothing. The drama happens in the last few days. That is compounding. Your wealth, if you save and invest steadily across decades, follows the same shape. The first 10 years feel like nothing. The last 10 years feel like magic. The magic is real, but only the people who endured the nothing get to see it. 3 truths. Behavior matters more than markets. Time is your asset. Compounding is invisible until it isn't. Carry them forward. Every other pattern we discussed tonight is a way of failing one of these 3 or succeeding at one of these 3. The first pattern is loss aversion. Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, demonstrated decades ago that humans feel losses about twice as strongly as we feel equivalent gains. Losing $100 hurts about as much as gaining $200 feels good. This asymmetry shapes almost every financial decision you make. It is why people refuse to sell a losing stock. The loss is not real until you sell. Holding lets you pretend it isn't there. Selling forces you to confront it. So you hold and hold, often watching the loss deepen because the pain of acceptance is too sharp. It is why people sell their winners too early. A gain that has not been locked and feels precarious. Selling makes it real. So people take the gain when it is small, leaving the long-term compounding behind, just to avoid the imagined pain of giving it back. It is why retirement accounts often underperform. People watch their portfolios in a down market, feel the pain of paper losses, and pull money to cash. They sell at the bottom. They miss the recovery. They lock in a real loss to avoid the discomfort of an unrealized one. Loss aversion is also why insurance markets exist. People pay more than the actuarial value of risk year after year because the pain of a possible loss outweighs the cost of a guaranteed small payment. This is not always irrational, but it is universal. We all do it. Researchers have measured this asymmetry in dozens of experimental settings. The most famous experiments offer subjects 2-stage gambles. Stage 1, you receive $100. Stage 2, a coin flip. Heads, you gain another 100. Tails, you lose 50. Most people decline the second stage, even though the expected value is positive. The fear of losing the 50 outweighs the higher expected gain. The brain treats the 50 in hand as more precious than the 100 that might arrive. In financial markets, this plays out at scale. After major declines, retail investor withdrawals spike. People move billions out of stocks into cash, locking in losses just before the market recovers. The data on this is consistent through every major downturn in recent decades. The withdrawals at the bottom are loss aversion in action. The recovery that follows is the cost of it. How do you work with this pattern instead of against it? First, write rules in advance. Before you ever buy an asset, decide what would make you sell it. Write it down. Keep it where you can see it. When the moment comes, do not deliberate in the emotion. Follow the rule you set when you were calm. The reason this works is that decisions made under stress are different from decisions made in calm. Your future stress self is not the right person to evaluate your portfolio. Your current calm self is. Write the rules now, while you can think clearly, so that future you does not have to. Second, set automatic actions where you can. Automated monthly investing into a diversified fund removes the moment of pain. You do not have to choose to buy more when markets are falling. The system does it for you. The behavior happens regardless of your in-the-moment feeling. This is one of the most powerful financial habits ever identified. Automatic investing during market declines is, mathematically, when shares are cheapest. But humans, watching a decline, find it almost impossible to buy more voluntarily. The fear is too strong. Automation removes the choice from the moment and gives it back to the rule setter you were when you set up the automation. Third, zoom out. Loss aversion is most powerful when you stare at a daily chart. The more often you look, the more often you see paper losses. The more often you see paper losses, the more often you feel the pain. Most successful long-term investors check their portfolio rarely. They have set the plan. They trust the plan. They do not need to feel the volatility every day to validate it. There is a fascinating finding from behavioral economics. Investors who check their portfolios more frequently report higher anxiety and earn lower returns than investors who check less often. Same portfolio, same market, different behavior. The frequency of checking is the variable. Less checking, better outcomes, less stress. The portfolio does not care whether you are watching. Your peace and your returns do. The deeper truth here is that the feeling of loss is not the same as actual loss. The feeling can be triggered by paper movements that mean nothing for your actual life. Learning to separate the feeling from the reality is one of the most powerful financial skills you can develop. Loss aversion. Write rules in advance. Automate behavior. Zoom out. Carry it forward. The second pattern is the hedonic treadmill. Psychologists have shown, repeatedly, that humans adapt to almost any change in circumstances within about 3 months. Buy a new car. For the first weeks, you smile every time you sit in it. By month 3, it feels like the same car you have always had. Move into a bigger house. For the first weeks, you feel space and freedom. By month 3, the rooms feel normal, and you notice the things you wish were different. This phenomenon is called hedonic adaptation. Hedonic meaning pleasure. Adaptation meaning the way the mind adjusts. The implication for money is enormous. Most of what you spend on lifestyle upgrades gives you a brief boost in pleasure, followed by a return to your previous level of happiness. The car you bought becomes the baseline. You now need a slightly nicer one to feel that boost again. The house you upgraded to becomes the baseline. You now need a slightly nicer neighborhood to feel that boost again. This is the treadmill. You run, but the floor moves. You keep running. The view does not change. The treadmill is also why people who make twice as much as they used to often do not feel twice as wealthy. Their lifestyle expanded to match the income. The extra income was not saved or invested. It was absorbed into a higher baseline that produces the same baseline level of happiness as before. The income changed. The feeling did not. This is sometimes called lifestyle inflation. Each raise becomes a new normal. Each new normal requires the next raise just to keep up. There is a famous research finding from the early 2000s. Researchers studied lottery winners and accident victims, people who won large sums of money, people who suddenly became paralyzed. Both groups, when surveyed a year later, reported happiness levels not dramatically different from their pre-event baseline. The treadmill works in both directions. We adapt to good fortune. We also adapt to bad. The set point we return to is mostly our temperament. This is not an argument that money does not affect happiness. It does in the early stages when basic needs are unmet, when financial stress is constant. Beyond a certain threshold, however, the marginal happiness from more money declines sharply. Research by economists Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton famously suggested that emotional well-being increases with income up to a certain point, then plateaus, while life satisfaction continues to rise more slowly with continued income gains. The exact thresholds are debated and shift with inflation, but the general shape is well established. The escape from the treadmill is unusual but real. It is, broadly, to consciously break the link between income and lifestyle. To choose your lifestyle deliberately based on what actually matters to you, and to bank the rest into wealth. A few specific applications. When you receive a raise, ask yourself, what would I do with this if I had not received it? If you would have lived fine without it, which by definition is the answer, because you were living fine before it, then consider saving or investing all of it. Your lifestyle stays. Your wealth grows. This is sometimes called the raise bank strategy. It is one of the most effective wealth-building practices ever identified. Each raise, instead of expanding lifestyle, expands savings. The raises compound. Within a decade, 2 decades, the accumulated raises are substantial, and lifestyle has stayed at the level that was already enough. When you consider an upgrade, a car, a phone, a vacation, a house, ask, will this feeling last more than 3 months? Most often, no. The thing you are buying will become baseline within a quarter. The money will be gone. The pleasure is brief. This is not an argument for misery. It is an argument for awareness. Some upgrades genuinely improve your life sustainably. Many do not. The treadmill exists. Knowing it exists is the first step to choosing what is worth stepping onto and what is not. A useful contrast. Spending on experiences appears to produce more durable happiness than spending on objects. The reason is that experiences become memories that you can revisit, and they often involve other people, which deepens the lasting satisfaction. Objects, by contrast, sit in your home and adapt in a background quickly. If you want to spend on something that brings real, lasting pleasure, lean toward experiences over things. The truly wealthy people, the ones who are quietly comfortable rather than visibly extravagant, often live well below their means. Not because they cannot afford more, because they have noticed the treadmill and they have stepped off it. They take a portion of their income, they spend it on what genuinely brings them lasting satisfaction, and they save the rest. Year after year, decade after decade. This sounds boring. It is. Boring is what compounds. Hedonic treadmill. Lifestyle stays. Bank the raise. 3-month test. Experiences over things. Carry it forward. The third pattern is status games versus wealth games. Naval Ravikant, the investor and philosopher, draws a distinction that, once you see it, you cannot unsee. Status games are zero-sum. For you to win, someone else has to lose. They're played in social rank. Who has the nicer car? Who is at the better restaurant? Who looks more successful? Wealth games are positive-sum. For you to win, no one else has to lose. They are played in compounding capital, in skills that produce value, in relationships that last decades. The trap is that status games look like wealth games. They are often mistaken for each other. The man with the expensive car looks wealthy. He may also be drowning in debt that requires the car to maintain his social position. The woman with the beautiful house looks wealthy. She may also have spent every dollar she made on the appearance, with little to show for the decades behind it. Looking rich and being rich are different things. Sometimes they overlap. Often they do not. Robert Kiyosaki, who is debated but says something true here, distinguishes between income, assets, and liabilities. Income is what comes in each month. Assets are things that put money into your pocket. Investments, businesses, rental properties. Liabilities are things that take money out of your pocket. Debt service, expensive cars, large homes that consume maintenance. Most people who look wealthy are stacked with liabilities. Their cash flow is high, but their net wealth is moderate because everything they earn flows back out to support the appearance. Most people who are actually wealthy have stacked assets. They may not look the part. Their cars are older. Their homes are modest. Their clothing is unremarkable. But their accounts compound year after year, while their visible lifestyle stays stable. The book, The Millionaire Next Door, documented this pattern decades ago. The actual millionaires the researchers studied were largely small business owners, professionals, and longtime savers, not the visibly wealthy. The visibly wealthy were often debt-funded. The actual wealthy were often inconspicuous. The research is striking when you look at the details. The average self-made millionaire in the United States drives a car older than 7 years, lives in a home that is modest for their net worth, and shops at ordinary stores. They built wealth by spending less than they earned, consistently, for decades. They are surrounded by neighbors who appear to have similar lifestyles, but who, on paper, have far less wealth because they spent more aggressively. This brings us to the choice. Most people are unconsciously playing status games while believing they are playing wealth games. The behaviors look similar from the outside, but the trajectory diverges over decades. The status player ages into limited freedom. The wealth player ages into expanding options. Why is the status game so seductive? Because human brains evolved in small groups where social rank mattered enormously for survival and reproduction. The instinct to signal status is ancient. The instinct to compound wealth is recent and abstract. Status feels urgent in the moment. Wealth feels distant. The lizard brain reaches for status. The thoughtful brain has to remember to choose wealth. If you want to play the wealth game, 3 small practices help. First, notice when you are about to spend on visible status rather than functional benefit. The expensive bag that does the same thing as the cheap one. The luxury car that drives no better than the reliable one. The neighborhood that costs 3 times as much for slightly nicer schools. Ask, is this a status purchase or a value purchase? There is no shame in occasional status purchases. We are social animals. The signaling matters in some contexts. The question is whether you're deliberate about it, or whether status purchases dominate your spending without your noticing. The former is fine. The latter is a quiet path to never building wealth despite high income. Second, build the habit of invisible wealth. Save automatically. Invest consistently. Tell no one. Most of what you accumulate, no one will ever see. That is the point. The wealth game is largely played behind scenes. There is a phrase attributed to many sources that captures this. The wealth that nobody sees is the wealth nobody can take from you. The wealth nobody sees is also the wealth that does not invite envy, comparison, or imitation. It compounds quietly in your accounts, while your visible life remains modest and your friendships remain genuine. Third, choose companions who play wealth games. The people you spend time with shape what you consider normal. If your friends compete on visible status, you will too, almost automatically. If your friends discuss investments, businesses, and long-term thinking, you will too. There is a well-replicated finding that financial habits, like many behaviors, are contagious within social groups. If your closest friends save and invest, you are more likely to. If they spend lavishly and carry debt, you are more likely to. The composition of your social circle is, in part, a financial decision. Status versus wealth. Visible versus invisible. Brief versus compounding. Carry it forward. The fourth pattern is the power of patience. Warren Buffett, who is among the most successful investors in history, has said that his investment style requires only 2 skills: the ability to do nothing and the ability to wait. He is famous for his slowness, his unwillingness to chase trends, his decades-long holding periods. Most retail investors do the opposite. They move quickly. They check often. They react. They trade. They optimize. And most of them, over time, underperform a simple buy-and-hold strategy. The data on this is consistent and grim. The average individual investor's actual return is significantly lower than the return of the funds they invest in. This is because of behavior. They buy near tops when enthusiasm is high and sell near bottoms when fear is high. They do this many times across their investing lives. Each round trip costs them. Over decades, the total cost is enormous. The power of patience is, in part, the power of not doing those things. There's also a more subtle truth. Compounding requires time. The longer you let an investment run, the more dramatically it compounds. Selling resets the clock. Each sale is a tax event, a transaction cost, a reentry decision. Each interruption is a small subtraction from the long curve. The investor who buys an index fund at 30 and does literally nothing until 65 will, in most historical scenarios, end up wealthier than the investor who buys and sells constantly, even if the second investor is slightly more skilled at picking entries and exits. Doing nothing in financial markets is one of the most underrated skills. This connects to the broader principle. Patience is rare because it is uncomfortable. Doing nothing while others act feels passive. Holding through a downturn feels stupid. Watching others get rich on the latest trend while you stick to your boring plan feels like missing out. It is not. Most of the trends that look like easy money in the moment are paths to losses by the end. The ones who got rich were the few earliest movers who got lucky. By the time you see the trend, the easy money is already gone. What remains is the late-stage volatility, the speculation, and the eventual collapse. The patient investor watches all of this, sometimes uncomfortably, and continues their boring plan. A historical pattern worth noting. Every decade contains at least one major asset bubble that in the moment seems like a permanent new paradigm. The dot-com boom of the late 1990s. The housing bubble of the mid-2000s. Various crypto cycles. Meme stock. SPACs. Each cycle, the same pattern repeats. A few early participants make spectacular gains. A flood of late participants pile in, drawn by the visible returns of the early ones. The cycle peaks. The collapse follows. The late participants lose most of what they brought in. The patient investor, who watched without joining, is unaffected. This is not a prediction that every bubble must collapse. Some new technologies do produce durable wealth for those who invested early. The challenge is that you cannot tell in real time which is which. The honest answer is most bubbles end badly, and the safest behavior for non-experts is to stay in diversified, low-cost, long-term holdings and ignore the cycles. A few practices help. First, lengthen your default time horizon. When you make a decision, ask yourself, how does this look in 10 years? 20 years? Most short-term concerns become smaller in the long view. The investor with a 30-year horizon does not panic about a one-year decline, because over 30 years there will be many one-year declines, and the market has historically recovered from all of them. The investor with a one-year horizon panics about every decline, because each one threatens the entire time frame. Same market, different horizons, different behaviors, different outcomes. Second, reduce check-in frequency. Looking at your portfolio every day creates emotional volatility that is not present in the underlying assets. Looking quarterly or annually keeps you connected without inducing reactive behavior. There's a useful exercise. Ask yourself, what would I do differently today if I checked my portfolio? If the answer is nothing, then there is no reason to check. The information would not change your behavior. Yet looking would create emotional response. Skip the look. Save the emotion. Third, treat patience as a skill, not a personality trait. Patient investors were not born patient. They built habits, automatic investing, low-frequency checking, simple rules that made patience the default. You can too. The deepest patience is also philosophical. It is a recognition that wealth is built over decades, not days. That the news of any given week is mostly noise. That the same market that made many people rich over 20 years also seemed terrifying many times along the way. The patient investor holds, not because they do not see the volatility, but because they understand that the volatility is the price of admission to the returns. The power of patience. Do nothing. Wait. Compound. Ignore the cycles. Carry it forward. The fifth pattern is money scripts. Dr. Brad Klontz, a financial psychologist, has identified 4 core money scripts that adults carry, often unconsciously, from their childhood experiences with money. These scripts shape financial behavior more powerfully than most people realize. The first is money avoidance. People with this script believe that money is bad, that wealth is corrupting, that wanting more is shameful. They often grew up in families where money was either scarce or treated as a source of conflict. As adults, they undersave, undercharge for their work, and feel uncomfortable when their accounts grow. They sabotage their own wealth unconsciously because the wealth feels wrong. This script is common in people who grew up hearing phrases like, "Rich people are greedy," "Money is the root of all evil," "We are not those people." The phrases get internalized. Later in life, when the person has the chance to build wealth, the internal script resists, and the wealth never quite arrives, or it arrives and gets quickly given away or wasted. The second is money worship, the opposite extreme. People with this script believe that money will solve their problems, that more money will bring happiness, that wealth is the path to security. They often grew up watching financial stress and concluded that the answer was simply more. As adults, they overwork, overspend on visible status, and find that no level of income produces the peace they were chasing. The treadmill intensified. Money worship can drive enormous productivity in early adulthood, which is why this script is overrepresented among entrepreneurs and high achievers. The problem is that the achievement does not produce the expected peace. The person keeps achieving, expecting the next level to feel different, and the feeling never comes. They retire into discontent or never retire at all because retirement feels too quiet for someone whose identity is tied to financial striving. The third is money status, the belief that net worth equals self-worth. People with this script measure themselves and others by financial markers. They are competitive about money, often comparing salaries, possessions, neighborhoods. They feel diminished when others have more, inflated when others have less. As adults, this drives them either to relentless accumulation or to debt-funded display. The money status script is the engine of much of the luxury consumption economy. People buy expensive things partly for the objects themselves, partly to signal their financial position to others. The cycle of buying, comparing, and rebuying never satisfies because someone else always has something newer or more impressive. Status is, by definition, relative. There is no fixed point of arrival. The fourth is money vigilance. People with this script believe that money should be saved, never wasted, and discussed only in private. They are often very good with money in technical terms. Saving rates are high, debt is low, but they may also struggle to enjoy what they have, refuse to seek financial advice from professionals, and pass quiet anxiety about money on to the next generation. Money vigilance is, in some ways, the most functional of the 4 scripts. It produces high savings and low debt, but it has costs. The person may live below their means well into retirement, denying themselves modest pleasures that the wealth could easily afford. They may distrust banks, financial advisors, or anyone outside the immediate family with information about their wealth. They may worry constantly about money, even when their actual position is secure. The anxiety is the cost of the vigilance. Most people are not purely one type. Most carry a blend, often shaped by which parent or guardian was the dominant influence, what events happened in childhood, what financial drama unfolded in the home. A divorce involving financial conflict can create money vigilance. A parent who lost a job can create money avoidance or money worship, depending on how the loss was framed. A wealthy upbringing with high social pressure can create money status. The scripts are individual, formed by individual histories. The point of identifying your script is not to label yourself. It is to notice the unconscious patterns that drive your decisions. Once noticed, they can be examined. And what is examined can be chosen. A few questions to ask yourself. What did your parents say about wealthy people when you were a child? What did they say about poor people? What did they say about you in relation to money? When you received money as a child, what happened to it? Was it celebrated? Was it taken away to save? Was it spent quickly? Was it a source of conflict? When money is short now, what feeling rises in you? Anxiety? Anger? Shame? Withdrawal? That feeling is data about your script. When money is plentiful now, what feeling rises? Joy? Suspicion? Guilt? That feeling is also data. Working with a financial therapist, if available, can help surface and rewrite these scripts. The work is partly emotional and partly practical. The emotional part is recognizing the early patterns. The practical part is building new behaviors that align with what you consciously want, rather than what the inherited script automatically produces. Most of what we believe about money was not chosen by us. It was inherited. Becoming aware of the inheritance is the first step to deciding what to keep and what to release. Money scripts: avoidance, worship, status, vigilance. Inherited but examinable. Carry it forward. The sixth pattern is the risk you actually have versus the risk you think you have. In financial planning, two concepts often get confused: risk tolerance and risk capacity. Risk tolerance is your emotional ability to handle losses. How much can you watch your portfolio decline before you panic? How much volatility can you stomach before you sell? Risk capacity is your financial ability to handle losses. How much could you actually lose without affecting your life? How many years until you need this money? How much income could you replace if your investments dropped? Most people confuse the two. They take more risk than their tolerance allows because their capacity seems to support it until a crash hits and they discover that their emotional response is different from their financial position. Or they take less risk than their capacity allows because they fear volatility, missing decades of growth they could have safely participated in. The skill is to assess both, honestly. Your risk capacity is mostly arithmetic. How long until you need the money? 5 years or less, you need stability. 10 years or more, you can absorb significant volatility. 20 years or more, you can take serious risk with the expectation that markets recover. Time horizon is most of risk capacity. Other factors enter the arithmetic too: job stability, family obligations, existing debt, other sources of income, insurance coverage. All of these affect how much loss you could absorb without disruption to your life. A young single person with stable employment, no debt, and a long horizon has high capacity. A parent of 3 approaching retirement with significant debt has low capacity. Same investment options, very different appropriate strategies. Your risk tolerance is psychological. The best way to assess it is to remember how you felt during past downturns. The 2008 financial crisis. The 2020 pandemic crash. The 2022 correction. What did you do? Did you sell? Did you hold? Did you buy more? Your past behavior is the strongest predictor of your future behavior. If you sold during past downturns, your true risk tolerance is lower than you think. The strategy that asks you to hold through declines you have historically not held through is not the right strategy for you. Better to take less risk and actually stick with it than to take more risk and abandon it at the worst moment. If you held or bought more during past downturns, you have higher tolerance than average. You can probably take more risk than the standard advice suggests and benefit from doing so. If you have not yet experienced a major downturn, if you have only invested during a bull market, be humble. You do not yet know your true tolerance. Expect to discover it when the next decline hits and plan accordingly. A useful framing from behavioral economics. Risk tolerance often appears higher when markets are rising and lower when markets are falling. People's stated tolerance shifts with conditions. The honest measure is not what you say in a calm market. It is how you behave in a stressed one. The first big downturn you live through reveals your tolerance more accurately than any questionnaire ever will. A practical exercise. Imagine, in detail, that your portfolio dropped by 40% tomorrow. Sit with the feeling for a few minutes. Picture checking your account. Picture telling your spouse. Picture the news headlines. Picture yourself looking at the chart for the next year, watching it stay down, perhaps fall further. If, in this imagined scenario, you would panic and sell, your real money allocation should be conservative enough that you would not face that scenario. If, in this imagined scenario, you would calmly buy more, you can take more risk than most people. Most people are somewhere in between. The honest assessment is the foundation of a portfolio you can actually live with through cycles. There is also the concept of margin of safety, which we covered earlier in the mental models chapter. Apply it here. Build a buffer of cash or stable assets that covers, at minimum, 6 to 12 months of essential expenses. This buffer is not investment. It is emotional infrastructure. It lets you take real risk with your investments because the fundamentals of your life are not on the line. The margin of safety also lets you avoid forced selling. The worst time to sell investments is during a crisis. But if a crisis coincides with you losing your job or facing an unexpected expense, you may have to sell at exactly the wrong moment. The emergency fund prevents that. 6 to 12 months of expenses sitting in cash, untouched, lets your investments continue to compound through any storm. Some people object that holding so much in cash is wasteful, that the money could be earning returns instead. They are right, arithmetically. But behaviorally, the cash buffer enables long-term investing. Without it, you are one bad month away from disrupting your strategy. With it, you can hold through anything. The opportunity cost of the cash is small. The opportunity cost of being forced to sell at a bottom is enormous. The risk you actually have. Capacity is arithmetic. Tolerance is emotional. Both matter. Build the margin. Carry it forward. The seventh pattern is what wealth actually buys. Most people, asked what they would do with more money, give vague answers. A nicer car, a bigger house, travel. The list is usually consumption. But ask people who have actual wealth what they value most, and the answers shift. They speak about time, about options, about not having to take meetings they do not want to take, about being able to walk away from situations that no longer serve them, about waking up and choosing what they do that day. Morgan Housel calls this the highest form of wealth, the ability to wake up and say, I can do what I want today. This is sometimes called the peace dividend. The return on wealth, beyond a certain point, is not consumption. It is autonomy. Consumption is a treadmill, as we discussed. The 15th nice meal is not noticeably better than the first. The 30th nice vacation does not feel meaningfully different from the third. The pleasure of buying things compresses while the cost expands. But autonomy does not compress. The freedom to say no, when you would have said yes for the paycheck, is real every time. The freedom to leave a relationship that does not work because you do not need the financial entanglement is real. The freedom to take a year off, to learn something new, to be present with people you love, that does not become baseline. It remains a daily benefit. Every day you exercise it. This reframes the goal of wealth. The goal is not the number. It is not the title of millionaire. It is the autonomy that wealth, past a certain threshold, makes possible. How much is enough? The honest answer is it depends. It depends on where you live, what you want to do, how many people depend on you, what kind of life you actually want. There is no universal number. But there is a useful framework, sometimes called the FU money concept. The level of wealth at which you no longer have to do anything you do not want to do. The level at which work becomes optional. The level at which a bad day at the office is just a bad day, not a financial threat. For some people, this is hundreds of thousands of dollars. For others, millions. For others, even more. The number is less important than the principle. The principle is define what enough looks like for you deliberately and stop chasing more once you have it. There's also a deeper version of this concept. Some philosophers and writers distinguish between three types of money. Survival money, what you need to not be in crisis. Sufficiency money, what lets you live comfortably and securely. And freedom money, what lets you do whatever you want indefinitely. The middle level is plenty for most people if they define it well. The upper level is what some people pursue, often at significant cost to other parts of their life. A surprising research finding. Studies of high net worth individuals have shown that their reported life satisfaction often does not differ dramatically from people at the threshold of financial security. The marginal happiness of additional wealth, past the point of meeting needs and modest wants, is small. The people who report the highest life satisfaction are often not the richest. They are the ones who built enough security to remove financial anxiety and then redirected their energy to relationships, purpose, and presence. Most people never define enough. They keep chasing. They reach 1 million and feel the same way they felt at 100,000. They reach 10 million and feel the same way. Without a definition, there is no destination. The chase continues forever, and the autonomy that was supposed to come from wealth never quite arrives. The people who arrive at the autonomy are the ones who pause to ask, what do I actually want this for? They build to that, and then they stop. They use the wealth, rather than continuing to accumulate it, for the freedom it provides. This is the deepest paradox of wealth psychology. The point of wealth is not wealth. The point is the life on the other side of it. The freedom, the time, the presence, the ability to choose. A practical exercise worth doing once in your life. Write down, in detail, what your life would look like if you had enough money to never have to work again. What would you do with your days? Where would you live? Who would you spend time with? What would you create? What would you learn? Be specific. Now look at the list. How much of it requires the wealth you imagined? Some of it does. A lot of it often does not. The relationships, the presence, the creativity, the curiosity, these are available now at any income level if you make the time. The wealth was, in part, an excuse for not doing these things in the present. This is not to say money does not matter. It does, especially when needs are unmet. It is to say that once needs are met, the wealth mind starts to ask the wrong question. The question is not, how do I get more? The question is, what is the life I want to live, and how much money does that actually require? What wealth buys? Time, options, autonomy, the peace dividend. Define enough. Carry it forward. Let me bring this together. The framework you now carry. 3 foundations. Behavior matters more than markets. Time is your most powerful asset. Compounding is invisible until it isn't. 8 patterns. Loss aversion. You feel losses twice as strongly as equivalent gains. Write rules in advance. Automate behavior. Zoom out. The hedonic treadmill. New becomes normal in 3 months. Lifestyle expands to absorb income. Lock lifestyle. Bank the race. Choose experiences over things. Status games versus wealth games. Looking rich and being rich are different. Status games are zero-sum and visible. Wealth games are positive-sum and quiet. Play wealth games. The power of patience. Most investors lose to behavior, not strategy. Do nothing. Wait. Let compounding work. Reduce check-ins. Ignore the cycles. Money scripts. Childhood shapes your unconscious financial patterns. Avoidance, worship, status, or vigilance. Examine yours. Choose what to keep. The risk you actually have. Tolerance is emotional. Capacity is arithmetic. Match both, honestly. Build a margin of safety. What wealth actually buys. The point of wealth, past a certain threshold, is not consumption. It is autonomy. Define enough. These are not investing tips. They are patterns of mind. The math of finance is widely available, free, and unchanged for decades. What is rare is the psychology that lets a person apply it consistently across an entire life. The single most important habit underneath all of this is simple. Spend less than you make. Invest the difference. Wait, it is so simple it sounds insultingly obvious. And yet, the majority of people, even high earners, do not do it. They earn and they spend, and the gap that should compound never appears. If you can build the habit of the gap and keep it across decades, you will quietly become wealthy. Most of the rest is detail. There is a final principle worth carrying forward. Wealth is built slowly and lost quickly. The slow process is unglamorous. It is years of small decisions, made consistently, that no one notices. The quick loss is dramatic. It is a single large mistake, often at a moment of euphoria or panic, that undoes years of slow work. The honest financial life avoids the dramatic mistake. It builds the slow accumulation. It accepts that there will be no story to tell about how the wealth was built, because the building was made of small, repeated acts and no single moment of triumph. The story will only emerge in the rearview mirror decades later, when you look back and see that the line on the chart bent upward exactly because you were boring during the years when others were exciting. Tonight, you do not need to remember anything specific. The patterns will surface in the moments that matter. A spending decision, a career choice, a market downturn, a status comparison. Quietly, one of these names will return to your mind, and you will see the situation through that lens. You will choose better. That is what mental models are for. Not to ace a quiz. To shape decisions across a lifetime. Sleep gently tonight, or work calmly, or walk. Whatever you are doing while you listen, these ideas are settling. Tomorrow, they will be part of how you see. Tomorrow, choose one small thing. Maybe automate a savings transfer. Maybe pause before a status purchase. Maybe write down what enough looks like for you. Any of these, repeated across the years, will move you toward the freedom that wealth is actually for. Good night. Good morning. Good afternoon. You are now equipped, just a little better, to navigate the psychology of money than you were an hour ago. That is enough. A bonus chapter. For more patterns. You will recognize them in your own life within the next few days, once they are named. The first bonus pattern is anchoring. The first number you see in any negotiation, in any purchase, in any comparison, becomes the reference point against which every other number is judged. Researchers have shown this is true even when the first number is obviously meaningless. People asked to write down the last 2 digits of their social security number, then asked to bid on a wine bottle, bid more if their digits were higher. The arbitrary number anchored their valuation. In retail, this is why luxury items are often displayed first, with the higher prices visible. The high price makes the cheaper items feel reasonable. Without the anchor, the cheaper items would seem expensive on their own. With it, they seem like a deal. In salary negotiation, the first number named tends to dominate the conversation. If an employer names a low salary first, all counteroffers are relative to that low number. If a candidate names a higher number first, the negotiation centers around it. To work with anchoring, set your own anchor before others can set theirs. In any negotiation, propose your number first. In any major purchase, decide what you would pay before looking at the asking price. Once you see the asking price, your judgment is already shaped by it. The second bonus pattern is mental accounting. Richard Thaler, the Nobel Prize-winning economist, demonstrated that people treat money differently based on where they think it came from. A bonus from work feels like found money, available for spending. A regular paycheck feels like real money, requiring careful budgeting. A tax refund feels like a gift, often spent on lifestyle. The same dollars, treated differently, depending on the mental account they live in. This shows up in subtle ways. Many people will drive across town to save $10 on a small purchase, but think nothing of paying an extra $10 on a large purchase. The $10 is identical in both cases. The mental accounting makes one feel important and the other feel negligible. The fix is to treat all your money as one pool. $1 is $1 regardless of where it came from. Bonus dollars are not different from salary dollars. Tax refund dollars are not different from any other dollars. Once you build the habit of treating money this way, you stop overspending the windfalls and stop undervaluing the regular income. The third bonus pattern is the peak-end rule. Kahneman again. The mind remembers experiences not as continuous wholes, but as the peak moment and the end moment. The average experience is shaped largely by these 2 points, regardless of the rest. This is why a 1-week vacation with a great final day feels better in memory than a 2-week vacation that ended on a tired note. The final day is weighted heavily in how the whole vacation is remembered. For money, this matters in 2 ways. First, in purchases, the moment of buying often becomes the peak of the experience, while the actual use, day after day, fades into the background. Looking forward, anticipating, and the moment of acquisition often produce more pleasure than the ownership that follows. Second, in selling or letting go, the end of a financial relationship, a job, a partnership shapes how the whole experience is remembered. A messy ending colors years of pleasant work. A graceful ending colors years of difficulty. Where you can, choose the ending carefully. It will define the memory more than the middle. The fourth bonus pattern is the endowment effect. People value things they own more than identical things they do not own. Research shows that subjects given a coffee mug demand about twice as much money to part with it as subjects without the mug are willing to pay to acquire it. The mug did not change. Ownership did. In financial decisions, this manifests as resistance to selling assets you own, even when better alternatives exist. The stock you bought feels different from a stock you might buy. The house you own feels different from a house you might purchase. The job you have feels different from a job you might apply for. The endowment biases you toward keeping what you have, even when changing would be objectively better. To counter this, periodically ask, would I buy this today, at today's price, with what I now know? If the answer is no, you may be holding from inertia, not from genuine value. Selling is hard, but it is sometimes the right move. For more patterns, anchoring, mental accounting, peak end, endowment effect. Combined with the 8 from earlier, you now carry 12 patterns. Each one shapes financial behavior, often unconsciously. Once named, they become visible. Once visible, they become choices rather than reflexes. The deepest practice of money psychology is this. The patterns are not your enemy. They are how the human mind works. Try to eliminate them is futile. The practice is to notice them, especially in moments of decision, and to choose whether to follow them or to act against them. Sometimes, the pattern is right. Often, the pattern is wrong for your long-term interests. The skill is in distinguishing. The wealthy mind is not the mind that has overcome all psychological patterns. It is the mind that recognizes them, almost in real time, and chooses anyway. The same impulses arise. The same fears appear. The same temptations show up. But the choices are made deliberately, not automatically. That is the difference, repeated across decades, that builds wealth. Sleep gently, or work, or walk. Whatever you are doing while you listen, the patterns are now part of how you see. Before we close, one final reflection. The money patterns we have discussed tonight are not problems to be eliminated. They are the inheritance of being human. Every person who has ever lived has felt loss aversion, has adapted to wealth and lost the joy of it, has compared themselves to neighbors, has wanted instant gratification, has carried scripts from childhood that shaped their adult choices. You are not broken if you recognize yourself in these patterns. You are normal. You are honest. The work is not to be free of the patterns. The work is to know them well enough that they no longer run you without your knowledge. This is the deeper meaning of money psychology. The wealthy mind is not the unbiased mind. It is the bias-aware mind, the one that catches the loss aversion reflex before it triggers a panic sale, the one that questions the next status purchase before it locks in another year of working to pay for it, the one that pauses before lifestyle inflation absorbs a raise, the one that recognizes a money script and decides, this time to write a different one. You will fail at this often. So will everyone else. The patterns are deep. The pull is real. But each time you catch yourself, each time you choose differently than the pattern would have, you build a different relationship with money. Slowly, quietly, over years. And the years compound, just like the dollars. Tomorrow, choose one small thing differently. The day after, another. A decade from now, look back and see the path that emerged. You did not need to be brilliant. You needed to be aware and consistent and patient. That is enough. That has always been enough. Sleep gently, or work, or walk, whatever you are doing while you listen. The patterns are now part of how you see. Good night, good morning, good afternoon. You are now equipped just a little better than you were a few minutes ago. That is enough.